10. Mickey was born from betrayal and desperation. Most people think Mickey Mouse was simply Walt Disney's first big idea. But the truth is, he was born from betrayal, a desperate act of survival after Disney lost everything. Back in the 1920s, Walt Disney and animator Ub Iwerks had created a character called Oswald the Lucky Rabbit for Universal Pictures. Oswald was doing well, and Walt thought he was finally on his way to success. But when he went to renew his contract, he was blindsided. Universal had stolen his creation. Even worse, most of his animators had been secretly hired away behind his back. Walt was left with nothing except a loyal partner, Ub Iwerks, and a crushing sense of loss. During a train ride back to California in 1928, broke and humiliated, Walt began sketching a new character, a small mouse with big eyes and an even bigger personality. At first, he called him Mortimer Mouse, but when Walt's wife, Lillian, said the name sounded too stuffy, he changed it to Mickey. That single moment of casual advice turned despair into destiny. Ub Iwerks, the brilliant animator who had stuck by Walt, worked non-stop to bring Mickey to life. Using only pencils, imagination, and raw determination, Iwerks animated thousands of frames by himself. Every blink, every movement, every expression was handcrafted. The result wasn't just a cartoon character, it was a comeback. Mickey wasn't born from success. He was born from heartbreak and grit, proving that sometimes the greatest creations come from the hardest losses. And the irony? The betrayal that broke Disney also gave him the freedom to create the most iconic character in the world. A reminder that failure can be the start of something legendary. Number 9. Steamboat Willie wasn't Mickey's first cartoon. Everyone remembers Steamboat Willie as Mickey Mouse's first appearance. That 1928 short film, featuring Mickey whistling as he pilots a riverboat, became a cultural explosion. But here's the twist. Steamboat Willie wasn't actually Mickey's debut. 2 earlier Mickey cartoons had already been made, Plane Crazy and The Gallopin' Gaucho. Plane Crazy was inspired by Charles Lindbergh's historic solo flight across the Atlantic, which had captured America's imagination in 1927. In this short, Mickey builds his own plane to impress Minnie Mouse. It was charming, funny, and technically impressive. The problem? Nobody wanted to distribute it. Walt showed it as a test screening, but there were no takers. The Gallopin' Gaucho, a swashbuckling parody of the Four Musketeers, met the same fate. Distributors thought Mickey was just another animal cartoon. Then came Steamboat Willie, and the game changed forever. It wasn't the animation that made it revolutionary, it was the sound. Walt Disney was obsessed with adding synchronized sound effects and music to animation, something no one had successfully done before. Using a combination of sound-on-film technology and hand-timed orchestration, Steamboat Willie synchronized every squeak, whistle, and laugh perfectly to the movement. Audiences had never seen or heard anything like it. When it premiered at New York's Colony Theater on November 18, 1928, the crowd went wild. Critics raved, and Disney's name became synonymous with innovation. Mickey had arrived not just as a cartoon character, but as a cultural event. But imagine this. If Plane Crazy had been picked up first, Mickey might have become famous without sound, and Disney might never have pushed the boundaries of animation the way he did. The failure of his first 2 shorts forced him to innovate, and that risk created one of the biggest milestones in cinema history. Steamboat Willie made Mickey a star overnight. Within months, Mickey merchandise flooded stores, fan letters poured into the studio, and Disney realized he wasn't just an animator anymore, he was building a brand. In fact, the world's love for that cheerful whistling mouse was so intense that within just 2 years, Mickey Mouse was more recognizable than most political leaders. He wasn't just a cartoon. He was America's new ambassador of optimism during the Great Depression. Walt once said, "I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse." But few people realized that this mouse nearly never saw the light of day. Mickey was almost a forgotten sketch from a man who'd just been robbed of everything. Instead, he became a symbol of creative resilience that reshaped entertainment forever. As the 1930s began, Mickey Mouse was no longer just whistling on a boat. He was whistling his way into history, soon to conquer comic strips, merchandise, and even Hollywood's red carpets. But his journey was far from over, because behind that happy face were still more secrets waiting to be uncovered. 8. Mickey's voice was Walt Disney himself. Before Mickey Mouse had a team of animators, composers, and voice actors, he had one voice, and it came straight from the man who created him. From 1928 until 1947, the cheerful squeaks and laughter of Mickey Mouse were voiced by none other than Walt Disney himself. It wasn't just a creative choice, it was personal. Walt saw Mickey as his alter ego, the version of himself that never gave up, no matter how chaotic life became. In those early years, Mickey wasn't just a cartoon character, he was Walt's way of communicating hope and humor during a dark time in American history. The Great Depression had hit hard. Families were losing homes, jobs, and dreams. But then came this little mouse, mischievous, fearless, and endlessly optimistic, bringing laughter to millions who desperately needed it. Disney didn't just provide the voice, he lived the voice. When recording, he'd act out every scene with the same energy Mickey showed on screen, climbing over props, pretending to steer, jumping, laughing, even gasping. Colleagues said Walt would walk out of the recording booth drenched in sweat after long sessions, totally immersed in his creation. Mickey's voice wasn't easy to produce either. The early sound systems were primitive, noisy, and inconsistent. Walt had to time every syllable perfectly to match Mickey's mouth movements. And remember, these were all hand-drawn frames. So if Walt's rhythm changed, the animation team had to redo entire sequences to fit the new timing. It was painstaking work, but it made Mickey's cheerful tone feel authentic. Not robotic, but alive. As the years went by, Walt's schedule grew more demanding. The company expanded, and his voice acting became harder to maintain. In 1947, he officially passed the torch to sound effects artist Jimmy McDonald, though Walt continued to step in for special moments. Later, Mickey's voice would be carried on by several talented actors, each carefully trained to capture that innocent yet adventurous tone that Walt first gave him. It's strange to think about it now, that one of the world's most famous characters literally spoke with the voice of his creator. But maybe that's what made Mickey special from the start. He wasn't just drawn. He was spoken into existence by a man who believed in him with every ounce of his soul. When fans asked Walt why Mickey never lost his cheerful spirit, even through all the chaos, Walt smiled and said, "Mickey is simply myself, moving forward." In a way, Mickey's voice became Disney's heart, echoing through decades of laughter. A reminder that creativity, when it comes from the soul, can outlive even its creator. Number 7. Mickey Mouse almost got replaced by Donald Duck. This might sound unthinkable today, but there was a time when Disney considered phasing Mickey out and letting another character take the spotlight. That character was none other than Donald Duck. By the late 1930s, Mickey's personality had changed dramatically. In his early years, Mickey was mischievous, daring, and a bit of a troublemaker. The kind of character who poke fun at authority and take risks. But as Mickey became the face of Disney, that side of him had to be toned down. He was now a role model for children, a wholesome figure and the unofficial mascot of American optimism. But audiences started to notice something. Mickey was becoming too perfect. He couldn't get angry, couldn't act selfish, couldn't be reckless. In short, he was losing his comedic edge. Walt himself admitted that the more popular Mickey became, the harder it was to write stories for him, because the new Mickey had to be a saint. Then came Donald Duck, introduced in 1934. With his fiery temper, sarcastic humor, and total lack of self-control, Donald was everything Mickey couldn't be. And audiences loved it. Kids laughed at his tantrums. Adults related to his frustrations. He was chaotic, unpredictable, and incredibly fun to watch. Soon, Donald began taking the lead in more cartoons. By the early 1940s, he had his own series and was even featured in World War II propaganda films that boosted his popularity worldwide. Mickey, meanwhile, appeared less and less frequently. Some studio insiders even joked that Donald had stolen Mickey's thunder. The competition didn't stop there. When Disney launched Fantasia in 1940, Mickey starred in the now legendary Sorcerer's Apprentice segment, his first serious comeback. The scene, with its haunting music and dark magic, reminded audiences why they fell in love with him in the first place. Mickey wasn't just funny. He had heart, wonder, and imagination, but Walt Disney knew balance was key. He didn't let Mickey and Donald compete. Instead, he made them complement each other. Mickey became the optimistic hero, Donald the frustrated everyman, and Goofy the lovable fool. Together, they formed a trio that defined Disney's golden era. In the decades that followed, Donald's fame sometimes even surpassed Mickey's, especially in Europe, where Donald comics outsold nearly everything else. But globally, Mickey remained the face of the brand, the ambassador of happiness. Still, it's fascinating to think how close he came to being replaced by his own sidekick. If Walt hadn't realized how to balance those personalities, Mickey might have faded into history as that nice mouse who used to be famous. Instead, his legacy continued, precisely because he shared the stage. Mickey didn't have to be the loudest or funniest character. He just had to be the heart of the show, the one everyone could root for. And that quiet leadership, that warmth, is exactly what helped him outlast not only Donald Duck but nearly every cartoon character of his time. By the end of the 1940s, Mickey Mouse wasn't just surviving, he was evolving into a symbol far bigger than entertainment. He was about to become an icon of hope in a world recovering from war, and his journey was only getting more incredible. Number 6. Mickey became the first animated character to speak, and his first words were unexpected. By the end of the 1920s, Mickey Mouse had already taken the world by storm as the little mouse who whistled his way into people's hearts. But when it came time for him to speak, no one expected what he would actually say. It happened in the 1929 short The Carnival Kid, where for the very first time, audiences heard Mickey open his mouth, and the words that came out were, "Hot dogs, hot dogs." It might sound funny or even random today, but this was a groundbreaking moment in entertainment history. Before this short, most animated characters were silent or relied on synchronized sound effects, like the whistling and musical timing in Steamboat Willie. Giving a cartoon character a voice, one that actually matched the lip movements, was revolutionary. The animation process behind The Carnival Kid was far more complex than anything Disney had done before. Every syllable had to line up perfectly with the animation, frame by frame, which meant Walt Disney and his team spent weeks recording, editing, and re-recording to make it work. They didn't have modern sound editing tools, just basic microphones, wax discs, and a lot of trial and error. The result? Audiences were stunned. Children screamed with delight. Adults laughed in disbelief. Newspapers called it a new era of talking pictures. Mickey Mouse wasn't just moving, he was alive. And yes, that voice again came from Walt Disney himself. Walt had practiced Mickey's lines for hours, trying to strike the perfect balance between cheerful and high-pitched without sounding too cartoonish. He didn't want Mickey to sound silly or shrill. He wanted him to sound innocent and human. From that point on, Mickey became the voice of American optimism. His first words, "hot dogs," might seem trivial, but they captured the essence of his character. Simple, joyful, and relatable. Mickey didn't talk about politics or philosophy. He was excited about hot dogs, about life, about the little things that made people smile in the middle of the Great Depression. After The Carnival Kid, Mickey's voice evolved with each cartoon. He started singing, joking, even expressing anger or fear, a huge step for animation. By the 1930s, he was no longer just a novelty. He was a personality, capable of emotion and humor. This innovation paved the way for all talking cartoon characters that followed, from Bugs Bunny to SpongeBob. Without Mickey's hot dogs ist moment, the art of giving life to animated voices might have taken decades longer to develop. And maybe that's the beauty of it. Mickey didn't start with grand speeches or deep monologues. His first words were playful, spontaneous, and pure, just like the magic that Walt Disney always wanted to share with the world. For 5, Mickey Mouse was once banned in some countries. It's hard to imagine now, a smiling cartoon mouse being banned by governments. But during the early 20th century, Mickey Mouse wasn't always seen as harmless fun. In fact, in several countries, he was considered so powerful, so influential, that authorities tried to silence him. One of the most famous cases happened in Nazi Germany. During the 1930s, Mickey Mouse had become a global icon, adored by children everywhere. But Adolf Hitler's regime saw him as a symbol of American capitalism and moral corruption. Nazi propaganda claimed that Mickey was a tool of Western influence that could poison young German minds. By 1937, Mickey cartoons were officially banned in Germany, replaced with government-approved propaganda films promoting German purity. Yet irony followed. Despite the ban, German children still found ways to get Mickey merchandise through underground markets. American soldiers later recalled finding Mickey Mouse pins and drawings hidden in bombed German towns after World War II. Proof that no ban could erase a child's imagination. Mickey also faced censorship elsewhere. In the Soviet Union, during Stalin's rule, Mickey was briefly restricted as part of a larger effort to suppress Western culture. Officially, it was said that Mickey promoted frivolity and consumerism. Unofficially, the government feared that Western cartoons would make their own state propaganda look dull by comparison. Even in parts of Europe after the war, Mickey's presence was controversial. Some educators believed he encouraged disobedience because of his early mischievous behavior, playing tricks, teasing authority figures, and acting too freely for comfort. But the strangest case came from South America in the 1940s, when a local newspaper falsely reported that Mickey Mouse had scared a child to death. Authorities panicked, briefly banning Mickey cartoons from local theaters, until the story was proven to be fake. Each time Mickey faced censorship, he came back stronger. By the 1950s, after World War II, Mickey had become a global ambassador of peace and childhood innocence. Countries that once banned him were now broadcasting his cartoons on national television. What's fascinating is how a simple cartoon mouse could cause such a strong emotional reaction, enough for dictators and governments to feel threatened. It speaks to the true power of storytelling. Mickey wasn't a political symbol by design, but he became one by impact. His smiling face reminded people, especially children, that happiness, imagination, and hope were stronger than fear or control. Walt Disney once said, "Laughter is timeless, imagination has no age, and dreams are forever." The story of Mickey's censorship proved that line wasn't just poetic. It was real. Mickey outlived regimes, wars, and bans, because you can silence a film reel, but you can't silence the dream it carries. By the time the Cold War began, both sides of the Iron Curtain, East and West, had children watching Mickey Mouse, laughing at the same jokes, even if their parents were divided by ideology. The mouse had done what politicians couldn't, unite people through joy. And in that sense, Mickey didn't just survive censorship, he conquered it. Number 4. Mickey Mouse helped win World War II. It's strange to think of a cartoon mouse playing a part in one of humanity's darkest chapters, But during World War II, Mickey Mouse became more than just a symbol of joy. He became a weapon of morale. From the trenches of Europe to the Pacific Front, soldiers carried Mickey on their helmets, painted him on bomber planes, and even wore him as Lucky Charms. He was the smiling reminder of home, of what they were fighting for. When the U.S. entered the war in 1941, Walt Disney Studios shifted gears almost overnight. Within days, the government contracted Disney to produce training films, propaganda shorts, and morale-boosting animations. Mickey, Donald, and Goofy all joined the fight. But Mickey, being the most recognizable, quickly became the face of American spirit. Posters featuring Mickey encouraging war bonds appeared in cities across the United States with slogans like "Keep 'em Flying" and "Defend Freedom." In one famous short called "Out of the Frying Pan into the Firing Line," Minnie and Pluto taught families how to recycle cooking fat to make explosives, turning household chores into acts of patriotism. Disney artists also personalized military equipment. Fighter planes, tanks, and submarines were often decorated with "Nose Art," featuring Mickey giving a thumbs up or holding a machine gun. This wasn't official branding. Soldiers requested it themselves. They saw Mickey as good luck, a symbol of hope that reminded them of the laughter they were protecting. At one point, the studio was producing over 1,200 training films for the military, from aircraft identification to anti-tank instruction. And while Mickey wasn't in every one, his image was always nearby, on posters, manuals, or patches stitched into uniforms. Walt Disney himself called Mickey the ambassador of goodwill. He even sent thousands of Mickey-themed Christmas cards to troops overseas, often hand-signed with messages like, "Keep smiling." These cards became treasures in foxholes, small reminders of humanity amid chaos. But Mickey's influence extended beyond morale. He became a global ambassador for America's cultural strength. Allied propaganda used Mickey as proof that creativity and humor could outshine tyranny. Even Nazi newspapers admitted grudgingly that Mickey Mouse had infected the world with laughter. After the war, when soldiers returned home, many brought back their Mickey charms and drawings as keepsakes. For them, the mouse wasn't just entertainment, he was survival. And here's something rarely mentioned. In 1944, an American tank division unofficially adopted Mickey Mouse as its mascot. They even painted him on their vehicles during the liberation of France. Decades later, French veterans still remembered that cheerful mouse leading the charge. When peace finally came, Walt Disney received thousands of letters from soldiers thanking him for Mickey's presence during the war. Some said that when they were afraid, they'd picture Mickey smiling at them. And somehow, it helped them keep going. So while Mickey Mouse never carried a gun or flew a plane, his spirit did something just as important. It gave hope where it was needed most. He reminded people that laughter was not a luxury. It was a form of resistance. Giver 3. Mickey Mouse helped create Disneyland. Imagine walking through Disneyland. The castle towering over the horizon, music in the air, and a smiling mouse welcoming you at the gate. It's impossible to separate the park from Mickey Mouse, but what most people don't know is that without Mickey, Disneyland would never have existed. By the early 1950s, Walt Disney had grown restless. He had conquered animation, won multiple Academy Awards, and built a global brand. But Walt wanted to create something more immersive, a place where children and adults could step inside the world of imagination. The idea came during a family outing to a small amusement park in Los Angeles. Walt was sitting on a bench eating peanuts while his daughters rode the carousel. He looked around and realized that most parents just sat and watched while their kids had fun. Walt wanted to build a place where everyone could experience joy together, a living storybook. Of course, turning that dream into reality required funding, and that's where Mickey Mouse came in. Mickey was Disney's most valuable asset, both symbolically and financially. Merchandising deals, cartoons, and licensing provided the steady revenue stream that made the park possible. In fact, Mickey's merchandise sales practically financed the early construction of Disneyland. When investors hesitated to fund such an ambitious project, Walt pulled out a sketch of Mickey shaking hands with children. He told them, "This little fellow made it all possible." It worked. The idea of a theme park led by the world's most beloved character was impossible to resist. When Disneyland finally opened on July 17, 1955, Mickey Mouse was everywhere, on banners, signs, costumes, and parade floats. Walt himself appeared on live television that day, standing next to Mickey, smiling proudly as he declared, "To all who come to this happy place, welcome." Behind the scenes, Mickey became the cornerstone of the park's design. Walt insisted that no matter where guests stood, they should always feel that Mickey was close, whether as a performer, statue, or symbol. That's why to this day, hidden Mickeys, small silhouettes of Mickey A.'s head, are scattered across the park in rides, fences, tiles, and decorations. Some say there are hundreds, maybe thousands, hidden in plain sight. Mickey wasn't just the park's mascot. He was its soul. Disneyland wasn't about roller coasters or food. It was about stepping into a world of optimism, the same optimism Mickey had embodied since 1928. And perhaps the most emotional moment came during Walt Disney's opening speech. As he looked out over the park, he whispered to a friend, "I only hope Mickey likes it." It wasn't just a joke. To Walt, Mickey was a partner, a living dream that had walked beside him from poverty to triumph. Today, more than 60 years later, every Disneyland around the world still begins its parade the same way, with Mickey Mouse leading the way, smiling and waving. Because without him, there would be no parade, no castle, no Disney magic at all. It's easy to forget that an entire universe of wonder, from Disneyland to Disney World to theme parks across Japan, Paris, and Shanghai, all started because of a little mouse that refused to be forgotten. And as every visitor walks through those gates, greeted by Mickey's cheerful voice, they're reminded that imagination, no matter how small, can build worlds. Yarktutu, Mickey Mouse, earned an Oscar and a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. For a character who began as a sketch on a train ride, Mickey Mouse didn't just conquer hearts, he conquered Hollywood. In 1932, Mickey received a Special Academy Award for his outstanding contribution to the field of animation. The award was presented directly to Walt Disney himself, and it marked the first time in history that an animated character had been officially recognized by the film industry. But Mickey didn't stop there. Over the decades, he appeared in more than 100 short films, winning multiple nominations for Best Animated Short. His influence on animation was so immense that when the Academy introduced the official short film category, it was largely because of Mickey's groundbreaking success. And then, in 1978, exactly 50 years after his first appearance in Steamboat Willie, Mickey Mouse received one of Hollywood's highest honors, his own star on the Walk of Fame. It was the first time any animated character had ever been given that distinction. On November 18, 1978, thousands of fans gathered on Hollywood Boulevard to watch the ceremony. Walt Disney had passed away more than a decade earlier, but his presence was felt everywhere. There, under the California sun, stood Mickey, in his tuxedo, waving, smiling, and proving that he wasn't just a cartoon anymore. He was a living legend. The plaque beneath his feet read, "Mickey Mouse," for his contribution to the motion picture industry. It's hard to overstate how revolutionary that was. Before Mickey, animation was considered a novelty, something for children, not serious art. But Mickey changed that perception forever. His films combined humor, emotion, and technical brilliance, inspiring generations of animators to push boundaries. Even today, the echoes of that little gold statuette and that star still ripple through pop culture. Pixar, DreamWorks, Illumination, all of them stand on the foundation Mickey built. And when you look at modern animation, with its emotional depth and visual mastery, you can still feel the influence of the mouse that proved cartoons could win Oscars. To this day, every November 18th, Mickey's official birthday, fans gather at his Hollywood star to leave flowers, sketches, and letters. They don't just celebrate a character, they celebrate an idea. That imagination, no matter how humble, can earn its place among legends. Number 1. Mickey Mouse saved the Disney empire more than once. Every empire needs a hero. And for Walt Disney, that hero wasn't a prince or a superhero. It was a mouse. More than once, Mickey saved the entire Disney company from collapse. The first time was in the late 1920s when Mickey replaced Oswald the Lucky Rabbit after Walt was betrayed by his own distributors. Without Mickey, there would have been no Disney Studios at all. But the second, and most dramatic, rescue came decades later. By the early 1980s, Disney was in crisis. The studio's animation department was struggling. Box office numbers were falling. Investors were losing faith, and corporate raiders were circling, ready to break the company apart and sell its assets. Even Disney's theme parks were showing signs of stagnation. The board needed something, or someone, to remind the world what Disney stood for. So, in 1983, they turned back to the beginning. They launched the new Mickey Mouse Club, revived Mickey merchandise, and reintroduced him to a new generation through television specials and global marketing campaigns. The move worked. Suddenly, Mickey Mouse was everywhere again. On lunchboxes, school bags, T-shirts, cereal boxes, even airplane tails. Kids who had grown up with Star Wars and video games were falling in love with Mickey just like their grandparents had. That nostalgic wave gave Disney the financial stability it needed to take bold risks again. Risks that would lead to the company's revival in the late 1980s and 1990s with films like The Little Mermaid Beauty and the Beast and the Lion King. Without Mickey's revival, there may never have been a Disney Renaissance. And Mickey didn't just rescue the studio financially, he preserved its identity. As Disney grew into a massive corporate empire with theme parks, TV networks, and acquisitions, Mickey remained its moral compass. He was the reminder that no matter how big the company became, its core mission was simple: to bring joy. Even today, when you walk through the gates of Disney World or see the company's logo light up the big screen, it's Mickey's silhouette that leads the way. His ears form the logo of Disney+. His face is stitched onto generations of plush toys, and his spirit defines the brand. Mickey didn't just start Disney, he kept it alive. Every time the company lost its way, that little mouse brought it back home. Walt Disney once said, "When people laugh at Mickey Mouse, it's because he's so human, and that's the secret of his popularity." He was right. Mickey wasn't strong, rich, or perfect, but he was brave, kind, and endlessly hopeful. Exactly what people needed through the Great Depression, through war, through change, and even through the uncertainty of modern life. Nearly a century later, Mickey Mouse remains more than a cartoon. He's a reminder that from the simplest beginnings, a pencil sketch on a train, can come something that touches the entire world. He's proof that even a mouse can change history. From heartbreak to Hollywood, from World War II to the digital age, Mickey Mouse has done more than entertain. He's inspired billions. He's survived betrayal, censorship, and competition, yet he still stands as the face of hope and imagination. He's not just the world's most famous mouse, he's a symbol of everything that makes storytelling timeless. And even after nearly 100 years, he continues to evolve, showing up in video games, virtual reality, and modern films. Always adapting, always smiling. Because Mickey's magic was never just about animation. It was about emotion, about reminding us that joy, creativity, and courage can outlast anything. So the next time you see those round ears or hear that cheerful voice, remember, you're not just watching a cartoon. You're seeing history, drawn, voiced, and kept alive by love. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like and share to help more people rediscover the magic of Mickey Mouse. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss our next deep dive into the untold stories behind legendary icons. Join our community for exclusive behind-the-scenes content, fun trivia, and early access to upcoming videos. And if you'd like to support us directly, tap the Super Thanks button. Every contribution helps us keep bringing history's greatest stories to life. Thank you for watching, and remember, as Walt Disney said, it all started with a mouse.